Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video where today we're going to be taking a look into chip strategy for Euro Fantasy 24. We're going to be telling you a couple of different strategies that we have in mind for this game, the pros, the cons, and everything in between. Let's get straight into it.
Okay, then, so yeah, as Ben mentions, there's going to be two main strategies, I guess you would say, throughout this. Obviously, one of them sort of deviates a little bit in terms of when you use a certain chip, but we'll get into that as we go through it. So, we're going to look at this strategy. We're just going to call it strategy one for argument's sake in this case. So yeah, it's going to be so obviously match day one you have unlimited transfers as everyone knows as you're setting up your team. Then it will be to use the limitless chip in match day 2 and then the wild card in match day 3. So you go absolutely just to the wall with all your chips used in the group stage to sort of maximise arguably better fixtures you'd like to imagine, with obviously all the weaker teams will be available to play in the group stage. Obviously, as you can see, the pros, as sort of just mentioned, it's going to be a really high ceiling if you get it right. If you're going to get a Belgium triple up in attack with De Bruyne, Trossard, and Lukaku and your limitless chip, they do absolutely amazingly well. 6-0, get all the points there. It's going to work really well. However, on the other side, if it doesn't work like that and maybe Belgium lose a game that you're predicting them to do really well in, you're going to have a really low floor. You're going to have players who aren't going to score that many points in your team. And obviously, as the knockouts progress, as you go further and further through the competition, your team is going to be weaker. So that is another con as well. So if you're basically just putting all your eggs into the group stage basket and sort of hoping that there aren't too many upsets and that your team can sort of be managed throughout the knockout stages with free transfers. What's your thoughts on this strategy, Ben? Is it something that you've maybe considered? I think this strategy sort of suits people who aren't maybe too not necessarily too engaged, but maybe don't really care too much about where they finish, right?
I actually think that this is a fantastic strategy. Now, the reason behind my thoughts on this based a lot on the UCL campaign as well, because the game is quite similar in the way that it worked with the group stage. And for me, I used all of my chips during that group stage phase because that's where the differentials are. The longer you go into the tournament, the more template it becomes because everyone has the same players from the same teams, and there's a less the player sort of base is less. There's going to be less players who are getting points. There's obviously teams that get knocked out, etc. So this chip strategy does maximize the amount of points you could potentially get because as soon as you go into that knockout stage, the last 16, you'll be able to see the route to the final, and you'll be able to see really who's most likely to get into that final. So you might load up on France if they have a good sort of route to that final and have a couple of potentially easier games than some of the other teams might have. So for me, this is probably the strategy that I'm going to go with and sort of almost use it as free hits, essentially, because if you used any of those limitless or wildcard chips in the last 16 quarterfinal, semi-final, etc., you almost lose an additional chip you gain from just going with like essentially a free hit game week one as well. So yeah, I really like this strategy. Yes, it has a high ceiling, and if you're looking to try and win the game, I think you should probably look at this strategy because it's sort of no safety. It's all off. But if you sort of want a somewhat decent finish, and you might not win it, you could go for the other strategy that we talk about. But I really like this, and this will probably be one that I look into going into this game.
Yeah, no, another positive as well that we didn't mention is that you obviously get that almost like a free wild card in the last 16. So as long as you can sort of successfully predict the last 16 knockouts and that there's not too many upsets, as I sort of previously mentioned, this strategy can work really well from that point of view as well. Because then you're getting that sort of, as Ben mentions, those free hits in essence in the group stage, and then you sort of manage to sort of work out the sort of the tournament route and stuff like that. So yeah, it can work really well.
Okay, so the next strategy that we've got is one that is probably slightly safer and less sort of gung ho. This strategy is, of course, limitless in match day 2, using your 2 free transfers in match day 3, getting through those last 16 games, and then wild carding in the quarter final. What this allows you to do essentially is for the last 16, you could really go all out and basically select a load of players who you think are going to do well, and it sort of gives you a bit of a safety net if it all goes wrong. Obviously, the Limitless in Matchday 2 looks to be one of the stronger chips to use in that game week anyway. But the only downside, of course, is Matchday 3. You're probably looking at a little bit weaker than everyone else potentially, because of course your team going into Matchday 1, you've got to think about 2 game weeks rather than just the one. Josh, what are your thoughts on this this potential strategy? It gives a little bit more room to maneuver.
Yeah, it does give you a bit more room to maneuver, but I will say it does make you're almost chasing the pack a little bit from the group stages, because you're obviously not going to have that ability unless you set up really, really well from your match day 1/match day 3 squad. However you decide to play it, maybe match day 1, match day 2, and then limitless in match day 3 or limitless in match day 2. You need to plan that really, really well, because otherwise, yeah, you're going to be chasing the pack. As you say, you can obviously, this does help you if you're potentially, if there's a lot of upsets in the last 16. Obviously we saw it, I think, in the last Euros when Netherlands got knocked out, when a lot of managers, I think, quadrupled up on the Netherlands because it was such an easy fixture on paper. I think it could have been to Czech Republic maybe or something like that. My memory's not too good, but yeah. So I think that's your main upside. So if you can, obviously it's a little bit hard to do mid tournament because you sort of want to pre-plan this throughout, but if you're seeing maybe, I don't know, Germany lose to Scotland, and or there's some upsets in match day 1, that could potentially lead to a little bit harder last 16 for some teams. So we might get some more upsets. But for me, if I'm personally choosing, I'll be on Ben's side as well. I'll probably use most of my chips or all of my chips in the group stage, just because who's playing this game to just get a good finish? We want to win it, right? So we're going to be going all guns blazing in that regard.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you in FPL, obviously everyone remembers their rank every single year, whereas for Euro, something like this, you only remember the winner of this sort of game. You don't sort of aim to get a good rank. If you get a bad rank, so be it. But I think both our opinions are that big balls to the wall strategy is going to be the best one to go for.
Okay, so that wraps up our chip strategy video. Let us know what your strategy you're leaning on. Obviously, me and Ben, as mentioned, are going sort of gung-ho from the beginning, all in the group stage. But are you playing it a little bit safer and probably maybe smarter, who knows, going into this tournament? Let us know in the comments.
And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good match day, everyone.
You may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.